You carry within you a spark that others can't imitate, a force that doesn't just resist pressure but bends it into something extraordinary. The very fact that you're here, curious and hungry for more, already sets you apart from the crowd. This isn't about fitting into the world's mold, it's about stepping into your own design, one that was never meant to be ordinary. Imagine a rhythm so unique that it breaks the silence of conformity, a pulse that doesn't echo anyone else's beat. That's what you embody, not repetition, but disruption. Not silence, but resonance. You're not here to camouflage, you're here to stand out, to alter the way the stage itself vibrates. There are countless people who settle into predictable patterns, moving like shadows and routines. But you are the unexpected storm, the crack in the sky that makes people look up. You carry a frequency that unsettles mediocrity and ignites attention wherever it dares to touch. Every movement you make, every choice you commit to, generates ripples that can't be traced by ordinary eyes. Systems built to monitor sameness stumble when confronted with your unpredictability. Your presence itself becomes a kind of signal that throws off the coordinates of anything trying to box you in. Think of yourself as the spark that bends the compass needle, the sudden blaze that shifts the entire landscape. You don't merely walk through obstacles, you distort their shape until they no longer hold the same power. That is your quiet rebellion, the invisible strength that rewrites the rules as you pass through them. You were not born to stand in perfect formation with everyone else, you were made to shift the formation itself. That sense of resistance, of never quite being contained, is not a flaw, it is your mark of genius, your reminder that you are not meant to be read like an open book but felt like a riddle in motion. So step forward with the certainty that your uniqueness is not just protection, it's transformation. You are not here to be scanned, mapped, or measured. You are here to remind the world that not everything can be tracked, and not every soul can be tamed. And in that truth, you will always remain untouchable. You are not ordinary participants in the game, you are the ones who tilt the board, the ones who force the rules to rewrite themselves in your presence. That's the level of precision you hold, not by accident, but by design. When subtle currents are introduced into the body, they do more than spark reactions, they unravel patterns, reshaping the way signals are read and interpreted. What was once a predictable rhythm suddenly becomes a shifting terrain where nothing stays aligned long enough to be controlled. Those who watch from the outside try to anticipate responses, cataloging tendencies as if behavior were a static equation. But equations break down when variables refuse to sit still, when the human spirit insists on moving in ways that no chart can confine. Placing contact points at key thresholds isn't random, it's a deliberate move. It awakens hidden corridors of energy, not just tickling the surface but diving deep into the architecture of perception itself. This is where instinct meets intention, creating a language that no outsider can decode. The real strategy isn't about resistance alone, it's about transformation. Instead of waiting to be mapped or measured, the current within you shifts its form, sending back echoes that blur attempts at prediction. The observer becomes lost in a maze of misdirection. Think of it as orchestrating a hidden symphony, where each note played disrupts the script others try to force upon you. What they expect to be a linear path becomes a spiral, a design so fluid it cannot be captured by rigid systems. In these moments, you cease being a target and become a force. Not just a body sending signals, but a living paradox, both mystery and defiance, both catalyst and shield. And it is within that paradox that your true strength rises, unreadable, unstoppable, undeniable. You are the kind who never settles for the illusions served up by others. You pierce through appearances and turn what was meant to control you into something you can command. That power to see beyond the veil is what marks you as unstoppable. Flooding the field with echoes, distortions, and mirages creates a storm that overwhelms the watchers. They see only shifting shadows, a landscape filled with false trails, while your true path unfolds quietly underneath, untouchable and unseen. The guardians of these systems believed they could record every movement, decode every thought, trace every signal. But their calculations falter when the streams they rely on become polluted with fragments that lead them nowhere. Their grip loosens as their maps collapse. At the heart of this turning point lies an instrument they never accounted for. It doesn't shout its presence, it rewrites the script silently, bending perception so that what they look for is never what they actually find. What they thought was certainty becomes uncertainty. This isn't just about trickery, it's about rewriting the balance of power. What once felt like being hunted transforms into a stage where the hunter is misled, while the one once pursued moves freely in the open. The cage turns into smoke. Every pulse of distortion is a declaration of freedom, every fragment of confusion a message that you are no longer operating on their terms. The game itself bends, as if the rules were never fixed to begin with, leaving only improvisation and adaptation. And this revelation spreads like wildfire, not contained to one moment but igniting a collective spark. What they never expected to be uncovered becomes the very tool that reshapes the field forever. Their surprise is your advantage, and their oversight is your breakthrough. You are the kind who turns uncertainty into clarity, refusing to live in the fog of speculation. Where others are left guessing, you uncover patterns with sharp precision, transforming mystery into understanding and hesitation into action. Signals once invisible now stand exposed, each one carrying its own distinct imprint. The designs aimed at different individuals are not uniform, they are tailored, adjusted, shaped to exploit weak spots. What was once a hidden assault now reveals itself as deliberate architecture. Discoveries are pouring in like revelations, as readings trace the outlines of energies that run through the body like sudden flares. Bursts of rhythm and pulse illuminate the nervous system, showing unmistakable imprints of external interference once dismissed as imagination. Different levels of oscillation are tied to different effects. Some stir restless tension, others unravel the depth of rest. Each range carries its own intent, engineered to push the body and mind off balance in subtle but destructive ways. And yet, what was long buried in secrecy can now be charted openly. Comparisons with long-forgotten research show uncanny parallels, connecting present experience with evidence that cannot be denied. What seemed unprovable is now aligned with documented traces from hidden archives. For the first time, those enduring these pressures are not left wandering without direction. The cloud of doubt lifts, replaced by confirmation that the unseen has been mapped. Their endurance is no longer isolated stories, but shared proof carved into the data itself. Most importantly, knowledge transforms into strength. With every signal identified, with every coded rhythm made visible, a pathway for response is created. The balance shifts, because clarity is not just recognition, it is the foundation of counterforce. You are the kind who refuses to remain only on defense. Your very essence carries the power to shift from surviving to striking back. That ability to turn pressure into propulsion is what makes you unstoppable, and it is the key to rewriting the balance. What once served only as a sanctuary now emerges as a blade of precision. By channeling fragments of identity into a conduit, the flow doesn't simply receive, it transmits. The field surrounding you becomes alive with presence, no longer silent but resonant, carrying your imprint outward at all hours. This shift unsettles the watchers. They had counted on one-sided control, never expecting the possibility of a mirrored response. Their attempts to impose force are met with an invisible tide pushing against them, creating confusion where certainty once lived. The streams of energy no longer act as passive shields but as currents carrying intent. Programs woven into these patterns don't just block, they dismantle. They scatter signals, dissolve pressure, and carve space for freedom where there was none before. The beauty lies in the reversal. Every thrust aimed in your direction risks being returned, altered, and redirected. The very lines meant to penetrate become pathways back to their origin, carrying echoes of their own effort back to where it began. This is no longer a battle of endurance alone but a transformation of position. Defense becomes initiative, resistance becomes offense, and silence becomes a message delivered across unseen horizons. In that moment, you are no longer the one being sought, you are the one rewriting the field itself. Not a passive subject of pressure, but an active force whose reach extends beyond walls, beyond distance, reshaping the game at its core. You are the kind who doesn't just endure hidden pressures, you strip them away, layer by layer, until what was imposed on you dissolves into nothing. That relentless drive to cleanse what others thought permanent is your mark of strength, and it's how renewal begins. The process feels less like maintenance and more like excavation. Day after day, fragments of foreign influence are lifted and dismantled, leaving behind a clearer field where your own rhythm can breathe again. It is not just about removing what harms the body, but about undoing the coded imprints designed to keep you tethered. Each cycle of removal is deliberate, systematic, like peeling back veils that were stacked to blur perception. The deeper the work goes, the more apparent it becomes that what once felt inescapable is neither permanent nor indestructible, it can be unraveled. Behind the screen, the architecture looks daunting, like something engineered for command and control. Thousands of layers and programs march in formation, yet buried among them lie the sequences that matter most, the ones that shift the balance in favor of liberation. Protections woven into these structures are not decorative, they are shields that bend against intrusion, disrupt patterns meant to fracture thought, and dissolve residues of engineered interference. They are tools of restoration disguised in the language of technology. Those walking this path often report the same turning point. Midway through the process, resistance intensifies. Pressure from outside sources grows louder, as though the unraveling itself is noticed by the systems losing their grip. That very pushback becomes proof that progress is being made. By the end of the cycle, what was once a heavy fog begins to lift. The cleansing is not just technical, it is symbolic, a reminder that what was imposed can be broken apart. And in that clarity, the individual finds not only recovery but a sharpened sense of power that cannot be erased. You are the ones who turn exposure into strength, who refuse to move in silence when the storm rises. What was once unseen is now traced, measured, and written down with a precision that cannot be ignored. That alone changes the balance. The pressure escalates when systems realize their veil has been pierced. Movements multiply, signals grow more aggressive, yet beneath the chaos a deeper truth emerges: desperation belongs to those losing control. The louder the interference, the clearer the cracks in their hold. Every spike, every pulse, every surge is no longer invisible. Instruments catch them in the act, locking fragments of evidence that stand as undeniable imprints. What was meant to pass unnoticed now carries a signature etched into record. Pages of documentation form a shield of their own. Each note, each chart, each logged reading is more than a record. It is a mirror that forces those shadows to see themselves exposed in daylight. Patterns begin to connect, forming a language of resistance. The attempt to tighten the net only proves its weakness. Force without subtlety reveals its own flaws, and the very tools meant to dominate become markers of failure. The unseen hunters leave behind trails they cannot erase. Reports begin to shift as days turn into weeks. A collective recognition spreads. The weight is not only endured, it is being redirected. Fear turns to resolve, and resolve becomes evidence of transformation. What once felt like endless pursuit now holds the first signs of reversal. With every record captured, every signal traced, the field tilts further away from control and closer to liberation. Something irreversible has begun, and it carries momentum that cannot be stopped. You are the ones who prove that persistence bends reality itself. What once felt endless begins to lose its grip, showing cracks where control used to seem absolute. That shift isn't imagined, it's the first taste of genuine freedom. The force still lingers, but it has grown faint, like echoes fading down a long hallway. Signals that once carried sharp edges now stumble, distort, and dissolve before reaching their mark. The weight of intrusion softens until it becomes little more than background static. Voices that once pressed against the mind lose coherence. They blur, stagger, then vanish altogether, leaving behind a silence that feels almost foreign. What was once a relentless intrusion shrinks into nothing more than fragments scattered in the wind. In the calm that follows, something long forgotten returns, deep, unbroken rest. Hours flow together without interruption, without being pulled from dreams or thrust into wakefulness. The body reclaims its rhythm, and the mind finds peace and stillness. For many, this is more than sleep, it is rebirth. The difference is not subtle, it is the return of vitality, of clarity, of strength that only true rest can give. What was stolen night after night is finally restored in full measure. The constant pulse of protection working without pause introduces a factor no one on the outside accounted for. The very continuity of it builds a field they cannot breach, a rhythm too steady to disrupt. And so, what began as resistance grows into restoration. Energy once drained away is now replenished, and with each night of undisturbed rest, resilience rises higher. The shift is undeniable, the tide has turned, and the ground is finally yours again. You are the ones who turn predictability into chaos for your pursuers, who refuse to stand still long enough for any system to capture you. That refusal to be pinned down is not weakness, it is your hidden strength, your cloak of invisibility in plain sight. The machinery that seeks control depends on rhythm, on patterns that stay unchanged. Yet when your essence shifts continuously, when your signal transforms moment by moment, the very tools designed to trace you collapse into confusion. What they expect to be a straight line becomes a whirlwind of changing signals. The more they try to align with you, the further their grasp slips, as if chasing a reflection that bends and fractures before they can reach it. Each alteration becomes interference, weaving new patterns that overlap and cancel one another out. The result is not silence, but a kind of camouflage, an invisible shield built not from hiding, but from constant transformation. The brilliance lies in how simple the effect appears from within, yet how devastating it is from outside. The observers cannot adapt quickly enough, their own systems betrayed by the very instability they cannot calculate. And then comes the greater revelation: these discoveries are not isolated. Across countless voices, the same recognition rises. People once scattered, uncertain, begin to see their experiences reflected in others. Together, that chorus becomes undeniable. The knowledge spreads, growing stronger with each shared account, and what was once individual survival transforms into collective awakening. The untraceable become unstoppable, not just alone, but as a movement. You are the kind who turn hidden systems inside out, who refuse to accept shadows as mysteries and instead translate them into maps. That ability to see patterns where others see only chaos is your true advantage, the key that shifts the battlefield. Every push leaves behind a trace, and those traces reveal more than their creators ever intended. Each surge, each vibration, carries an imprint unique to its origin. What was thought to be invisible becomes identifiable, as if each strike signs its own name. Once those imprints are recognized, the balance changes. With precision, responses can be tuned, not guesses, but deliberate waves crafted to meet and dismantle the force sent out. What once felt unstoppable now reveals its weaknesses in plain detail. Experiments show the possibilities go far beyond defense. Certain patterns don't just block, they push back, forcing the very machinery of intrusion to falter under its own weight. What was a threat becomes vulnerable to collapse when faced with the right rhythm. Others have uncovered responses that twist the interference back upon itself. Loops are created, cycles that trap the signal in its own echo, leaving its source overwhelmed by the very design it sought to project outward. These revelations are not accidents but breakthroughs born from persistence and observation. Each discovery builds a framework, a growing library of knowledge that transforms isolation into empowerment. The deeper the mapping goes, the clearer the truth becomes. The unseen infrastructure is not beyond reach. It can be traced, it can be understood, and once understood, it can be dismantled. What once hunted unseen now stands exposed, vulnerable, and no longer untouchable. You are the ones who refuse to remain passive, who take apart the very systems designed to subdue you and repurpose them into tools of disruption. That shift from surviving to engineering counterforce is what makes this moment so powerful. What began as self-protection has become a full reversal of direction. With custom patterns written into code, signals no longer vanish into the ether, they trace their way back, illuminating the hidden hands behind them. The hunted transform into investigators, mapping the source with precision. Tools once seen only as shields now function as companions in the field. During overt monitoring, programs pulse outward, bending the flow of energy around them until devices designed to observe falter. Cameras blur, instruments flicker, and the act of watching becomes its own undoing. Even the visible surface serves as a mask. What looks like a harmless glow hides a deeper current, one that ripples and ranges unseen but impossible to ignore. Those standing nearby feel the weight of it, unexpected pressure behind the eyes, sudden distortions running through machines. The watchers who once moved with confidence begin to stumble. Engines cut, circuits strain, and bodies meant to play out rehearsed dramas crumble under unseen burdens. Their rehearsed performances fall apart when reality bends against them. For the community, every shared account reinforces the same revelation: the very tools of intrusion are being turned against their users. What was once endured as injury is now harnessed as interference, a shifting tide that no longer flows one way. And in the midst of this, familiar instruments take on layered roles. They do not just mend the harm inflicted, they extend protection, weaving fields that soften the impact of old wounds while simultaneously disarming new ones. The balance has changed, and the shift cannot be hidden. You are the kind who no longer enter the night unguarded. You step into rest carrying strength woven into your very field. That quiet armor, unseen yet undeniable, is what allows you to reclaim the hours once stolen from you. Before dreams can even be disturbed, layers of protection rise like invisible walls. The pulses that once broke through so easily now crash against barriers of resonance, dispersing before they ever touch the mind. The dark hours become a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. For those who walk this path, the greatest revelation isn't only the shield itself, it's the realization of how much was endured without it. Years of nights fractured, of clarity blurred, of opportunities lost to exhaustion that was never natural but forced upon them. Every moment of broken concentration, every plan undone by a fog that didn't belong to them, becomes part of a ledger of resilience. And yet, with each new night spent in uninterrupted calm, that ledger begins to balance in ways once thought impossible. The grief over time lost is real, but so is the empowerment of knowing the cycle can be broken. What once felt like a curse without escape now bends to the will of technology reimagined as liberation. Reports echo with the same sense of awe. Peace at night no longer feels like a luxury, but a right restored. The body repairs, the mind clears, and the spirit regains the fire that fatigue had buried. This transformation marks more than protection, it is reclamation. Sleep is no longer a vulnerable space but a fortress, and within that fortress strength grows day by day, unshaken, unstoppable, and renewed. You are the ones who know the heavy cost of silence, the friendships fractured, the families pulled apart, the trust corroded by forces no one could see. That pain was never the result of weakness but of a battle fought without knowing the tools that already existed. The tragedy was never in your willpower but in being convinced you had no defense. For years, lives unraveled under pressures that seemed unexplainable, while the means to push back remained hidden in plain sight. But the truth is different. The choice to act doesn't have to wait for permission. The moment the right tools are put into motion, the balance begins to tilt. What once seemed like unavoidable suffering reveals itself as something that can be challenged, disrupted, and undone. The pushback against these solutions reveals more than skepticism, it shows fear. When systems meant to control face something that disrupts them, the first response is always suppression. That suppression is proof that the method holds weight. Conversations disappear, forums collapse without reason, voices that shared victories vanish as if erased. Reviews reflecting success fade overnight, while hollow criticisms sprout from nowhere, each one too shallow to hold truth. Such attempts to bury the evidence only highlight the reality. Effectiveness cannot be hidden forever. The harder they try to cover it, the clearer it becomes that something real is at work beneath the noise. And through this, the message is undeniable. Liberation is possible, not someday, but now. What once seemed like an endless prison of manipulation cracks open the moment knowledge meets action. That is why opposition grows louder, because it works, and because they know it. You are the ones proving that power doesn't only belong to vast systems with limitless budgets, it belongs to individuals who refuse to remain silent. That realization spreads faster than control can contain, and with it, the illusion of helplessness shatters. Across continents, people once cornered are finding out that their resistance carries weight. What was thought to be unstoppable machinery is faltering against tools simple enough for anyone determined to use. The scale of the operation doesn't matter when persistence finds the right key. The very fact that such breakthroughs are met with attempts to erase them is proof of their impact. Suppression always follows revelation. Censorship is the last refuge of those who fear losing control. Yet alongside those attempts to bury the truth, communities are stepping up to amplify it. Networks dedicated to resilience ensure that the message doesn't just survive, it grows louder. Access is no longer a privilege reserved for a few, but an opportunity shared widely. Every offering comes with the understanding that openness is essential. No hidden agendas, no concealed motives, only the clarity that this path forward is meant to be shared, not hoarded. In that transparency lies trust, and in trust lies strength. The collective stands taller when no piece of progress is hidden behind curtains of secrecy. The impact is undeniable. What was once endured alone now becomes a shared uprising. Knowledge spreads, barriers fall, and the tools of liberation move from whispered secrets to undeniable reality. That is the heart of why suppression grows louder, because the movement works, and because it refuses to disappear. You are the ones who transform survival into strategy, who recognize that every tool, every method, every shared discovery deserves to be carried forward. The strength of the community depends not only on endurance but on continuing to amplify what works, no matter how hard others try to silence it. The first step is always renewal, stripping away the layers of intrusion that don't belong to you. Clearing the body and mind of imposed residue creates the foundation. From there, tailored protections are set into motion, not just as barriers, but as active fields of resistance that grow stronger with each cycle.